Hey guys, it's Mrs. Allward, and today we're going to talk about our last type of factoring today, and it's factoring trinomials. That means three terms with a method called SPF. That stands for sum product factor. It's a bit of a puzzle, but we're going to work through it. So these are some general steps, but instead of just reading through them, I'm just going to work through the problems. All right, so they're there for your reference. So what we're going to do is we have our trinomial, three terms. One of them is an x squared term, one of them is an x term, and one of them is a term without an x. So we're going to make two sets of parentheses. We're going to put x's in the beginning. Basically, we're undoing double distribution. Okay. And the sum product factor comes in to the fact that we want to find numbers that multiply, that get the product. So we want factors of 8 that will give us a product of 8, and we'll add to be this middle number. Okay, so we want a pair of numbers that multiplies to the number on the end, but adds to be the number in the middle. So we make a little chart over here. I always start with 1 times the number itself. And so I go 1 plus 8, well, that's 9, so that's not it. So then I just start increasing. So the next number up is 2. I know I can do 2 times 4, and that gets me 8. Well, 2 plus 4, that's 6. And there we go. We want a positive 6 and a positive 8. So it's going to be a plus 2 plus 4, because positive 2 times positive 4 is a positive 8, and a positive 2 plus a positive 4 is a positive 6. Okay, our next example is x squared plus 5x plus 6. So we want numbers that multiply to 6 and add to give us 5. So let's make our list over on the side. 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. So which pair will add to give us 5? 1 plus 6 is 7. 2 plus 3 is 5. So that's the one we want. So we set up our parentheses, x, x, and we know that a positive 2 times a positive 3 will give us a positive 6. And then both a positive 2 plus a positive 3 will give us a positive 5. And we'll try one more of that style. We have x squared plus 9x plus 20. So we make our two parentheses. We get our x's in there, and then let's find numbers that multiply to 20. 1 times 20, well, those add together to give us 21, so that's not it. 2 times 10, well, those add to give us 12, still not it. 3 doesn't multiply by anything to give us 20, so we're going to skip that one. And then 4 times 5. Bingo, that's it. 4 plus 5 is 9. And we want them, oops, that should be a 5. And if they're both positive, they both multiply to be a positive 20, and they both add to give us a positive 9. Now you're asking, what's all this about positives? Well, we're going to get into that now in this next set of 3 examples. Because now if you look at it, this middle term is a minus. Okay, so we're going to set up our parentheses, put in our x's. So now we have x squared minus 7x plus 10. So we still want the numbers to multiply to give us a positive 10, but they have to add to give a negative 7. So I'm going to list my numbers out. 1 times 10 If I add those, I get 11. 2 times 5, if I add those, it gives me 7. But I need a -7. So I know if I make a -2 and a -5, a -2 times a -5, a negative times a negative will give me a +10, but a negative plus a negative will give me that -7. So I'm going to have a -2 and a -5. So let's try the next one. So then we have x squared minus 8x plus 15. So again, let's set up our parentheses, put our x's in there, and we're going to find numbers that multiply to 15. We'll start with our 1 times 15. That gives us 16. 2 doesn't multiply into 5 or 15, but 3 does. 3 times 5. Well, 3 plus 5 gives us 8, but we want a -8. So if we do a -3 and a -5, negative times a negative gives us a positive, but a negative plus a negative will give us that -8 we want. So -3 minus 5. So then let's try one more like this before I throw in another curveball. So here we go. We have x squared minus 13x plus 30. So set up our parentheses, and we're going to find numbers that multiply to 30. So the larger the number, the more factors it's going to have. So 1 times 30, well, that's going to be 31. 2 times 15, well, that's 17. 3 times 10, oh, there's our 13. But just like in these last two, we want them to be negative because a negative times a negative is a positive, but a negative plus a negative will give us that -13 that we want. Okay, last page. So now we're going to do something a little bit different. Now our product is going to be negative. Okay, so we have x squared plus 5x minus 14. We still set it up with our two sets of parentheses, but now we have to multiply to get a -14. And then multiply or then add to be a +5. So when we multiply to get a negative number, one number has to be positive and one number has to be negative. It doesn't matter the order, but when we have to figure out which pair of numbers needs or which numbers need the positive and negative, it comes down to how do we add them together to get a +5. So let's start with 14. What numbers multiply to be 14? Well, there's 1 times 14 and 2 times 7. Well, 1 plus 14 is 15 and 2 plus 7 is 9. Well, here's the catch. One of these numbers is going to be negative. So in this case, I like to think of you have to multiply to get this number and now subtract to get this middle number because of the sign differences. So I know the difference between 1 and 14 is 13, and the difference between 2 and 7 is 5. So this is going to be my lucky pair of numbers. But the catch is which one is going to be the positive and which one is going to be the negative. Well, I want to get a +5. So that means I need to do 7 minus 2 to get 5. If I did 2 minus 7, that would give me -5. And that's not what I want. So I want a +7 and a -2. So let's try that two more times. So we're going to have x squared plus 10x minus 24. So again, we're going to multiply to get that negative 24. And then because of this minus right here, we want the numbers to subtract to give us 10. All right, so we need our numbers that multiply to negative 24. So there's 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6. Okay, well, the catch here, don't forget, is we want to find out which pair subtracts to give us that 10. So don't be fooled that 4 plus 6 is 10, but really we want to find out which one subtracts. And that's going to be our 2 and 12. So 2 minus 12 is negative 10. 12 minus 2 is positive 10. We want the positive 10. So we're going to do x plus 12 and x minus 2. Let's try one more. We have x squared plus 7x minus 18. So we're going to take that negative 18 and we're going to find our pairs. So 1 times 18, 2 times 9, 3 times 6. And which pair will subtract to give us 7? That is going to be 2 times 9. And again, we want a positive 7. So we're going to want to do 9 minus 2. So plus 9 minus 2. So we're going to change it up one last time. Hopefully we can fit this in before my video ends. So we have x squared minus 16x minus 16. So again, we're going to multiply to get that negative number and subtract to get the middle number. But now we want the negative version when we subtract. So we set up our parentheses. So numbers that multiply to 16, 1 times 16, 2 times 8, 4 times 4. So the pair that subtracts to give us 6 is the 2 times 8. And because we want it to give us a negative 6, we want to do the 2 minus 8, which will give us the negative 6. So we're going to have x plus 2 and x minus 8. Last row. And if it cuts off, I'm really sorry, but you can grab the last two from my PDF file. All right, so we have x squared minus 7x minus 8. So we're going to find our numbers that multiply to 8. That's 1 times 8, 2 times 4. Which pair is going to give us negative 7? And that's our 1 and 8. And we know to get a negative 7, we can do 1 minus 8 to give us that negative 7. So plus 1 minus 8. And then this last one, we have x squared minus x. This is really an invisible 1 minus 12. So when we go through and we find our pairs of numbers that multiply to 12, we want to find which pair subtracts to give us negative 1. And that's our 3 times 4. And to get negative 1, we're going to do 3 minus 4. So plus 3 minus 4 gives us that negative 1. So that rounds out the notes on SPF, factoring with trinomials. Let me know or let Mr. Freilich know what questions you have, and we'll give you a help out on the assignment. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye.